What's going on, everyone? You are welcome to Web Chrony Online YouTube channel. Before I tell you what we will learn in this lesson, I have an important announcement to make. After this lesson, the subsequent lessons will be a practice of our knowledge in HTML and CSS. You and I together will design some popular websites as a way of practicing our knowledge and also an opportunity to learn other UI properties we couldn't capture in our previous lessons. If this sounds interesting to you and you are not already subscribed, I don't know what is preventing you from clicking on the subscribe button to be part of this amazing journey. Leave a like on this video if you learn a thing or two, or if you enjoy it. In this lesson, we will take a look at positions and flexbox in CSS. Other styling properties might pop up and we will address them if they do. I have my Visual Studio Code up and running already. I think we should get started. Okay guys, so without wasting much time, let's just head over to the Explorer, click on the index.html. For the sake of what we are going to do, I will clear everything and then bring the template once again. Of course, I'll change the title to Introduction to CSS, and inside the body I'll create two containers. Okay, but before we do that, I think it is time for me to introduce you to a new attribute in HTML element called class. Okay, so for example, I have a div container like this, and let me say I have an h1 element inside this div container that says this is an h1 element in a div container. Okay, now inside the opening tag of the div container there is this attribute called class. Okay, and I can give a class name, and this class name can be referenced in our CSS for styling purpose. Okay, it can also serve other purposes, but then at the moment, because we are doing CSS, we are only doing it for styling purpose. Okay, so the first class that I want to give to this div container is called container, like this. And of course, we can have more than one class name for a particular element in HTML. It's just a matter of separating them with an empty space or a white space. Okay, so I'll call this one container 1, like this. Okay, I'll go ahead and create another container, and for the sake of Emmet, if you want to create a class name directly without going through the stress of coming back to the opening tag, we will just bring a full stop like this, then we type container, which will be the first class name that will be assigned to the div. Okay, if I want a second one, I'll bring another full stop, and of course I'll call this one container 2, meaning I am giving two class names for this container or this div that I'm going to create. So when I hit enter, the div has been created and the class attribute has container and container 2 as the class names. All right, so I'll go ahead and create another h1 element in here, and of course I will just get some random text, let's say 10 words. All right, I think we should just click on the go live to show what we are doing so far. And in the meantime, so our web page has loaded successfully. I'll restore down the code editor so that we can show the two at the same time. At the moment, we haven't linked the CSS, and the reason is that I'm going to clear everything inside the CSS so that we can take it from scratch. Okay, but before we do the styling, let's link the CSS. So I'll create my link element here, and I'll walk out of the current folder, step into the styles folder and select the index. So now I have two containers, one here and the other also here. We are going to begin with the positions. Don't go away. Okay guys, so now we have two containers here, one here, one here. They both have container as a class name, and then they also have different class names, which is container 1 and container 2. And if you want to style web element based on their class name, as we did when creating the element, you just bring a full stop followed by the value of the class attribute. Okay, so for example, if I type container like this and then bring my opening and closing curly bracket, any styles that will be written here will apply to both the first element and then the second element. Okay, so for example, I want both of them to have a background color of, let's say, blue. Okay, and as you can see, they both have a background color of blue. This blue is too deep. I would like it to be, a bit beautiful, so something like this. I think something like this is fine. I want the text to be white. Okay, I think this is good. I also want the text to be white, so I'll set color to white like this. Great. I think I'll give some padding, so I'll set padding of 20 pixels. Okay, then of course I'll leave some margin bottom, so margin bottom of, let's say, 20 pixels like this. Okay, so I have the margin right there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is to treat the individual containers. So for example, I'll bring my full stop, I'll type my container 1 like this. I'll also go ahead and do same for the container 2, so dot container 2 like this, and then we'll begin styling the container 1. To make it a bit different, I think I should change the background color of the container 1. So I'll set the background color to, let's say, I think black is okay. Yes. And what I'm going to do first is to set the property of position. So I'll just type position like this, and the position comes with different values. So for example, we can set it to absolute, we can set it to fixed, we can set it to relative, static, sticky, and what have you. Okay, so I'll begin by styling the relative. And what the relative does is that it will style the element according to the flow of element in the web page. So for example, in this case, the container 1 comes first, followed by the container 2. Okay, so now that I have set the position to relative, I can change the position from maybe top, bottom, left, or right. Okay, so for example, if let me create another element at the top here. So I'll create another div, so let me say container 0. Okay, something like this, and inside here I'll create some random text of, let's say, 20 words like this. Okay, then I think I should code, of course the spelling should be correct. I should just copy this one here, bring it here like this, and let me say give it a margin bottom of, let's say, 30 pixels like this. Great. So let's study the flow of elements here. Okay, let me give this one a background color of red. So I'll just move this one here, and of course I'll bring this one down. I think this red looks nice. Yes, and then I should change the text color to white. Okay, I should also give it some padding of let's say 20 pixels, so that it will look very nice. Okay, good. Now let's take a look at the flow of elements. So the first one comes, the second one follows, and then the third one like that. Okay, now I have set the position property of container 1 to relative. Okay, so if I set the top to, let's say, 40 pixels, let's take a look at what happens. You see that it will move down by 40 pixels. Okay, if I change the top to, let's say, bottom, you see that it will move up by 40 pixels. Okay, so that is how it works. For example, I can also set for right. So if I type right like this and then maybe set it to 50 pixels, you see that the container will move 50 pixels away from the right. Okay, if I do same for the left like this, then it will move 50 pixels away from the left. Is that okay? Great. So it will maintain the flow of element. What I mean by maintaining the flow is that first will come first, second will come second, third will come third, except that we can change the positions. Is that okay? Great. Now I want us to take a look at the next property of the position attribute in CSS. So for example, with the container 2, which is of course the third element, if I set the position to absolute, okay, what will happen is that the flow of element will now not be based on what we have. It will be based on the viewport. What I mean by the viewport is that when we set a value for the, let's say, bottom, left or right, it will take it from the viewport, not the flow of elements. So let me show you what I mean by this. If I set the top attribute to, let's say, 10 pixels, you see that it will move from where it was to the top, and the distance from the very top of the web page and then the container 2 element is just 10 pixels. Okay, if I set the bottom, it will move to the very bottom of the web page. Okay, because the absolute property doesn't maintain the flow of element, it only takes it from the viewport. Is that okay? That's just by the way. There is another one called fixed, and with the fixed, what happens is that the fixed and the absolute, they are kind of having the same thing, but the only difference is that when we scroll, suppose we have more element and we scroll, the element will scroll along, but when we set a property to fixed, it will not scroll along. Let me show you what I mean by this. So for instance, I come under the last element and create a paragraph like this, and let me say inside this paragraph I have some text of, let's say, 50 words like this. Okay, I think it's not enough, so we should copy this one and then of course paste it some more times like this, and let's go into the styles and then add some styles to it. So under this closing curly bracket, I'll bring my P followed by my opening and closing curly bracket. Of course, I'll set font size to about 18 pixels. I will also give some padding of, let's say, 20 pixels, and then I'll give some margin bottom of 20 pixels like this, so that we can scroll. So now take a look at something. The position of the container 2, which is this one with the blue background, is set to absolute. So if I scroll, you see that it will scroll along. Okay, but if I change it from absolute to fixed like this, then even if I scroll, it will remain there. Is that okay? So that is the difference between the fixed and the absolute. So the absolute, we can scroll the element, but when we set it to fixed, we cannot scroll the element. Is that okay? Now there is another one called sticky, and what happens is that suppose I set the top. With the sticky, you can't set bottom, left or right. We can only set top. And of course, if you are you can scroll to the left or the right, then maybe you can set for left and right, but usually every web page we scroll top and down. Okay, so I'll change the bottom attribute to top like this, and let's take a look at what is going to happen when I start scrolling. So I scroll like this. When I reach at this point, now it stays there. Is that okay? So I can scroll to the bottom, I can scroll by, it will come back to its original position. But when I start scrolling and it reaches when it reaches 10% away When it reaches 10 pixels away from the top of the web page, then it will remain still. Is that okay? So that is it. So we have learned the sticky, the fixed, and the absolute, and also of course the relative. Okay, now I want us to take a look at something here. Let me give this h1 here. Where is this h1? The h1 in the third element, which is the container 2. I'll give it a class name of test2 like this, and inside the CSS I'll just call my test2 like this, and of course I will set the position to absolute. I want us to take a look at something here. So I set it to absolute like this. You see that the test cannot be found. No worry, we will bring it back. I think I should set the color to black so that we will see the color. So I'll set color to black like this. We still can't find the test. Okay, yeah, the test is right here. Okay, so if I set top to 0, let's see what happens. Well, you see the test doesn't go to the top because it is inside a container. Is that okay? It is inside a container. Okay, now let me comment out this one and let's see something. Now the test goes up there if we don't set position property for the container element. Is that okay? Great. So if we don't want this thing to happen, if you want to set the test or the child element in a container to have some position properties, and we don't want it to overflow the container, we have to first of all set the position of the parent to relative. Okay, so that when we set absolute property for the child element, it will not overflow the boundaries of the container or the parent element. Okay, I hope you are following. All right, so I think I should just uncomment this one, or maybe perhaps delete it so that we will maintain the usual flow. Okay, I hope you are following. All right, so as time goes on, we will get to learn some of these things. As time goes on, we'll be using them, especially when we start building our apps and of course designing some popular websites. Okay, so I think we will dispense the lesson for positions here. Coming up next is the flexbox. Don't go away. Okay guys, so for the sake of what we are going to do with the flexbox, I think it is also a good idea to clear everything here, and of course clear everything from here too, and then take it from the beginning. So I will just close live server and then open it once again. Okay, cool. So now our page has been loaded here. I will just change the title to introduction to CSS, and inside the body tag I'll create a div container with the class name called container, and inside this container I will create 3 sub containers. Okay, so they will also have their class names. So the first one will have item, and then of course item 1 like this, and inside here I will have some text of, let's say, 10 words. I will also copy this one 2 times, and then of course I'll change this one to 2 and this to 3 like this. Don't forget to link the index.css to the HTML file. So I'll create my link element right here. I'll walk out of the current folder, move into the styles folder, and select my index.css. So what I'm going to do for the first time is to select, of course, the container, which is the div with class name container. I will give a padding of, let's say, 20 pixels. I'll have some background color of aqua. Okay, I think the aqua is good. Then I will also have stars for the item, and inside the item I want to give a background color of, let's say, this color right here, something like this. Okay, cool. Now let me also give some margin so that we will see what is happening right here. Great. Now by default, a div is supposed to take a block. Okay, by default a div is displayed as block. So what it means is that a div will take the entire view width. Nothing can be placed on the side of it unless you set it manually. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is that inside the main container, I'm going to set the display from its current form to flex. Great. And as you can see, the items are now showing on the side. Okay, so I will increase the height of this container to about, let's say, 300 pixels so that at least we can see what is going on here. And then of course I will also set the height of the items to fit content like this, so that we can see what is happening. I will give some padding here of 10 pixels, and of course I will change the font size to about 20 pixels, and then yeah, I think that'll be all for now. So what I'm going to do now is that now that the display has been set to flex, okay, we can choose how the flex should appear. By default, when you set a display of flex, the items inside the container will be displayed on the side of one another. But if I don't want it that way, I can set the flex direction. So I'll type flex direction, and I have column reverse, row, and then row reverse. So let me just come here and say item 1. Inside here I will say item 2 so that we can see the difference, and of course this one will be item 3 like this, so we can see the difference right here. Okay, great. So I can set the flex direction to column like this, and then it will be displayed in the form of a column, so each one of them will have a display of block. Okay, I can also set it to reverse, column reverse like this, and you see that the item 3 will come top, followed by the item 2, and then the item 1. So what it means is that the items have been reversed. I can of course set this one to row reverse so that it will be in a row, or the elements or the items will be on the side, but the third one will come first, followed by the second one, and of course the first one will now be last. Okay, so flex direction is also another thing that we can do. All right, now the next thing that we can also do is that, of course, let me clear this margin. Great, now they are all put together. Okay, if I don't want it like that, what I can do is that I can set a property called gap like this, and of course set it to, let's say, 10 pixels. And what is happening here is that there will be 10 pixel space between each element. So if we have some more element, and of course they are wrapping to the next line, there will be 10 pixel space between each of them. Okay, now that I've mentioned the gap, I think we should also mention the ability of the items to wrap, and I will explain to you what the wrap does in a moment. So for example, if I set all the item to have a width of about 300 pixels, let's see what happens. Let me set the minimum width instead. So suppose I set a minimum width of 300 pixels. You see that now. Let me open full screen. If I open full screen, because we have a lot of estate for the element, they will appear just fine. But once we restore down, you see that we are only seeing just 2 elements. Okay, so this is where the wrapping comes in. So I can say flex wrap like this, and then with the flex wrap we have no wrap, wrap, and then wrap reverse. Okay, so the no wrap is the default one. It means that the items will not wrap, they will continue to be as they are right now. But if I set it to wrap, let's see what happens. You see that it will take it to the next line. So let me change this one to, let's say, 150, and let's see what's going on here. And let me change this one to, let's say, 250. Okay, so as you can see, the next one, because it is unable to find space in the main container or on the first row, it will be brought down. That is because of the flex wrap that we have set over here. If we set it to no wrap, let's see what happens. Suppose I set it to no wrap like this. You see that it will not wrap, but the dimensions or the weight of the items inside the container is not getting the 250 pixels width that we have set for it. Okay, so the wrapping is very important. So we have it right here. Okay, great. Now the next thing that we are going to do is we are going to take a look at alignment of the items. But before then, let me just comment out the flex wrap, also comment out the width. Then inside the container I can have align items. So we are going to align the item. So for example, when I type align items like this, I can set it to start like this, and let's see what happens. It will be at the top. I can also say end like this, and it will be at the bottom. Okay, I can say center like this, and it will be at the center of the container, okay, or the parent element. Now there is another one also called justify content like this, and with the justify content we can set it to start like we did for the align items. We can set it to start. We can also set it to end like this. Okay, so what I'll do here is that I will set the width of the items to, let's say, 50 pixels, so that we can see what is happening here. So as you can see, when we set it to end, they will all move to the end. 50 looks very ugly. Let's make it 100. Okay, great. So I think 100 is okay. So when we set the justify content to end, they will all move to the right, and when I set it to start, they will all move to the left like this. I can also set it to center, and they will all be in the center. Then there is another one called space around, and what will happen is that there will be an even space around the element inside the container. And of course there is another one called space between, and there will be space between the element inside the container. Is that okay? Great. Now let's come to the item container. Okay, so don't forget that we have item 1, item 2, and item 3. So in here I will just take my item 1 like this. I will also have my dot item 2, and of course I will have my item 3. Okay, great. So inside the items we have one thing we call flex grow. Flex grow like this. I can set this one to 1. Okay, then inside the item 2 I will set the flex grow to 2. I want us to take a look at something here, and inside the item 3, I'll set the flex grow to 3. Now let's see what is happening here. So this is the item 3, this is item 2, and this is item 1. Let me go to full screen so that we see what is happening here. So we are saying that divide the screen into 6. Let the first item have 1 portion. Let the second one have twice as much as the first one, and let the third one have 3 times the width of the first element. Okay, so that is what we have just done right here. Okay, so let me restore the browser so that we can show both at the same time. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is that, suppose I am not interested in the order of the elements. So for example, if I comment out the row reverse, okay, the first item will come followed by the second item, and then of course the third item. If I'm not interested in the order, I can set it manually. So for example, I can set the order for the item 2 to be 1. Okay, and then I will set the item order for the item 1 to be, let's say, 3, like this, and then order for the item 3 to be 2, like this. So let's look at what is happening here. So we have set item 1 to have order of 3, and of course that is exactly what is happening right here. And then we have set the item 3 to be in the second order, and of course it is happening right here. And finally we set the item 2 to take the first order, and that is exactly what is happening right here. Okay, great. So there are so many things that we can do, and for the sake of time, the tutorial is getting longer than I expected, so I will dispense it right here. Hopefully in our subsequent lesson we will design the landing page of Facebook. Okay, so I do hope you enjoyed this lesson. Leave a like on this video if you did. If you have any question, I would like to read them in the comments, and don't forget that I have the link to my WhatsApp group in the description of this video. Go check it out and join the platform. I'll see you next time with another tutorial. Until then, peace out.